Good day, and welcome to the Co-Way podcast, devoted to the idea that a team of people led by a good owner, sharing best practices in a culture built on trust and respect, will complete better projects. That's what the Co-Way is. And that's the sort of thing we're talking to folks about, including today's guests. I'm Howie Ferguson. I'm the executive director of COA, the Construction Owners Association of America. And today we're talking with and blessed to have Karen Mooney with MD Anderson Cancer Center. So, Karen, let's jump right in. Tell us, if you will, just kind of the quick version of your story, your journey. How did you get into this industry and how did you wind up at MD Anderson?
So I went to Texas A&M for to college, and my dad said, "You should probably be an engineer because engineers that's going to be a growing profession in the future." This was back in late '80s, and so sure enough, he was right. So I literally took the book. The back in the day, y'all we used to have like these books that like that's how you figured out what degree you get. And I read all the engineering ones and looked for the easiest one, which sounded like civil engineering, which will probably piss off all the civil engineers, but that sounded like the easiest one. So anyway, so I go to school, and I do not do well in engineering. So I thought, well, maybe I'll do architecture because it's all kind of in the same area, class wise. All the classes were close to each other. So then I went to architecture, and I was like, I don't. This is not for me. 20 hours building things out of little sticks. No, I'm out. So coincidentally, I found like literally a flyer. I've told this story millions of times. Literally, there was a pamphlet in the room, the council room or whatever, and it basically said, "Do you like engineering, but the math's too hard? Do you like architecture, but you don't like the art? Then you should try construction." And I'm like, well, "That's for me." So I went down the construction pathway, which my dad was not happy about, to say the least, because he thought I would have to move every 2, 3 years. So long story short, I went and worked for a contractor when I got out of school, and then through some networking, I I got a job at a hospital in Pasadena, and it blew my mind at the time that I had no idea that being a project manager for the owner was even possible. Like that, just like, because you just it just I don't know that it existed back in the early '90s. I mean, you went and worked for the big firms, Hensel Phelps, Gilbane, you name them. That's where you went to work.
Hmm.
So to that just was thrilling to me to be able to get a job at a hospital. So anyway, by a series of networking, I ended up coming to MD Anderson. So the hospital I was at in Pasadena, I was one person, and I was all things construction. I was the design team. I was the architect. Like I did all that. And then when I came to MD Anderson, 25 years ago, actually, this month is my 25th year. Um, I was blown away because there was like 6 project managers, and I'm like, what? To go from one to like 6. And of course, now I'm head of the construction department, and we have, I don't know, 160 professionals everywhere from, architects to planners to project managers. So I feel incredibly blessed. I'll leave it at that.
Well, and I mean, it's kind of an understatement to say you got in on the ground floor, as they say. Um, that's pretty remarkable, and happy anniversary. That's awesome.
Yeah. So what's interesting is, um, it, I like to say it was serendipitous, but I also will own that I'm good at my job, right? Because when I joined, we were just at the precipice of this huge growth. We didn't know that at the time. We just knew some stuff was coming. And with growth comes opportunity. So reorgs and all that kind of stuff, I was always able to move up. So I tell a lot of folks now, MD Anderson is also on this precipice of this major capital program. So I keep telling everybody, this is a place you want to be if you want to drive to the same place every day. And because there's going to be growth opportunity, right? I mean, you want to be on the rocket ship. I mean, right now we're a rocket ship. Although honestly, a lot of construction everywhere is rocket ships, right? Everything is growing and booming. So it's a great time to be construction trash, as I like to say, the construction trash that makes a bunch of money now.
Right. Yeah. Well, so this is great proof that this new brave new venture we're trying, this podcast. We have
Hmm.
some questions in mind, but there's no script, and we're going to go wherever our
Sure.
guests lead us. And you just led me to something that we may or may not have gotten to, but I'm glad you brought it up, Karen. And that is, yes, booms are happening everywhere. But what is happening at the same time, and I know you know this, is a struggle to
Mhm.
recruit and retain, which might be harder than recruiting good talent. What are what are y'all doing? What are you and what is your organization doing on both of those fronts to do that better, to recruit good folks and then to keep them?
That's such a good question, and it's hard, right? So the the current dilemma that we're in is that the salaries are our salaries are not keeping up with industry. So we have a lot of people that will decline positions because we're off 20 grand, right? That sort of thing. So working for a state organization, we don't just get to decide what somebody gets paid. There's a whole, thing that goes with deciding that, right? So I, one of the things we do, so we're adjusting that. So there's two things that we're doing. So one is you sell benefits, right? That's always, you don't think you need retirement, but you do need retirement. So let me tell you, um, that's the mailman. You got to love Zoom. So that's one thing. The second thing that we're doing in a much more intentional way is to grow our staff. So, for example, we've never had assistant project managers. We always just had PMs and senior PMs kind of thing. So now what we're realizing is we're going to have to grow them, right? So because if we're going to hire somebody who's got clinical construction management experience, they've done MRIs and they've done CTs, things like that. You can't get those guys off gals even off the street for it's so unique, if you will. So some of the projects we do are so unique that you're going to have to groom those people into those roles.
Hmm.
And what we find is most of those folks enjoy it, right? So if you can find that person that's like, you know what, um, that sounds like fun to me. The other thing I think we're really blessed with is we have this mission. So we're not Exxon. We're not just making money to give it to shareholders, right? I hear that a lot from staff that we hire. They're drawn to a bigger mission. So we can find those project managers all over the place. We tend to find folks that want to give a bigger purpose. There's always something. So a mission driven organization, but I can also enjoy my job. So if I'm going to make a new OR, I'm going to do it at a cancer hospital versus maybe a Texas Children's or Women's Hospital or something. So sometimes that's our best in. But I'll tell you right now, it is hard to find good project managers. Right? It really is. So because there's this huge competition for them, and it's tough. It's a employees market for sure.
Yeah, I love the piece. I love everything you said, but I really love the piece because I can relate, sort of, having when I was an owner working at a place that I cared about. But yeah, if you're coming to work and knowing that even if it's 2 or 3 degrees removed, you may not be the oncologist helping someone live, but you're playing a direct role in helping, if not cure cancer, then easing someone's pain. Anyway, that's pretty
It,
awesome.
it's it's amazing how much. So I talk to every new staff member that joins our team, and 9 out of 10 always will say, I'm doing it for a bigger purpose, or I like the idea of that sort of thing. So um, I think those are types of things that I don't know I would have known about when I was 22 and coming out of college and starting this construction. I mean, I literally fell into it. I didn't go, I want to go work at a cancer hospital. Not at all. I was like, you mean they'll pay me to like go to the same place every day? Oh my God, I was so excited, right? And all I got to do is coordinate the signs and the keys. And oh my God, I'm so excited. So a lot of what I try to do when I can is get out to the colleges and universities to go, the construction in my mind is a lot like, although they would argue with me, I'm sure, is a lot like a law degree. You can do a lot with it. a law degree is pretty transferable, and you can go do all these different construction. To me, there's a lot of nuances to it that people just don't realize, because you think, well, I'm just going to have to drive to a different city every couple of years and wear muddy boots. And it's like, it isn't nothing like that in today's world, right?
100%. And by the way, going back a few minutes, I had to laugh when you were talking. I had a kind of a similar thing when I was in college, but I did end up getting a civil degree.
Hmm.
I was
Yeah.
not pissed off. I was not offended by what you said. And you're right. There was 15 or 18 different engineering disciplines at the University of Florida, and I started going through them. I'm like, aerospace,
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds cool, but
That it sounds
electrical.
hard.
So I ended up in civil for all the other,
Yeah.
people who still
And
like that fun work.
the other thing that I think I learned in college that serves me incredibly well, fits completely in the mission of COA, and what we try to do with COA. So that first semester when I was in civil engineering, there was a lot of Corps cadets, and so all the cadets had test banks and this built-in network. So all the men, frankly, at the time, they were like kicking ass, right? It was all good, and it was like me and like one other girl are like, we had no network. I'll just leave it at that. We had no network. So when I ended up over in the construction college, it hit me, and I experience it everywhere to this day. The culture of construction is so much like a big bear hug. I mean, it was so much like, well, come in, we'll show you how to do it. We'll show you how to mix concrete. Now, I'm not naive to go, yes, I was probably one of 5 girls in a class of like 40. So, I mean, making nice to the girl is not a bad thing, right? But I have experienced that everywhere, that there is just a welcoming and a partnership and a network that comes naturally with construction in my mind. So I experienced it when in school, and then in every job I've had, it was always just so that sincere, authentic relationship building and partners, because we're all in this together kind of thing. And I was never felt, to this day, I've never been made to feel stupid, or you're slow, or like you don't deserve to be up on this ladder. None of that has ever happened to me. I know it's happened to others, but I've been very fortunate, mostly because I'm the first one to say, I don't know what I'm talking about. So can somebody gaps
Karen,
and
I had a question about you hitting going to the colleges and hitting up those young people and finding that those young people are really interested in the mission of the organization. And I think what I've seen in a lot of articles out there is that this current generation, I guess it's Gen Z now, are really, really interested in connecting their career with something that they love, so that it's not a job. It's something that they're pushing forward. And are you finding that when you visit? Is that are the articles real? Is that true?
So I haven't had that specific come up. What I have had come up quite often is, I'm not going to work myself to death. I'm not working 70-hour work weeks, and they want, like, the whole crazy work-life balance conundrum, right? I mean, they are sincere. Like, I need a life outside. I am not defined by my job. I get that a lot. So that's one of the things as owners, I feel like we could offer. I remember talking to a guy at Vaughn who was recruiting for young project managers, or starting positions, and the student said, well, I want to work 410s or something. Like, I want to work 410s. And they answered back and said, we offer 610s. That's what you get.
I was going to say, I used to work 612s.
Funny.
I don't know what 410s is.
Yeah, exactly. So what we can often sell is, when you work with an owner, you're going to work 5 days. Now, do you have to come in on a Saturday from time to time? Sure. But it's not like working for a contractor who's, it's sunrise to sunset kind of thing. So that's what I have found. I haven't, it's only once I get them on board or talk to the folks that are on board that will say, I was tired of working for a shareholder. The guy that told me about that Exxon, so he was a plumber, and of all things, and I said, well, why did you even end up here? And he goes, I was just tired of making money for stockholders. Like, I want to do something that matters. And I just thought, wow, what great perspective. Like, right? So,
Mm. Carol, I want to go back to something you were talking about that was kind of remarkable, especially for a woman in a man's industry, and that's starting to
yeah,
change a little bit.
sure.
But that you felt like the you used the word culture, um, and the bear hug, and you felt welcomed, and yeah, that's a very COA thing. But two things, two very different spin-offs of that. One, and you said I feel very fortunate, and other ones have not. So you don't feel like in your fairly long career that you have gotten um, that you felt out of place, that you were in this boys club. You've never really encountered any problems like that.
Um, no, I haven't. Like, now I'm trying to let me think about that for a minute. Um, I mean, you get the micro, things like, well, Karen, aren't you going to take the notes? No, I'm not. You know,
Why don't you
so
take them?
yeah, so you get a lot of that look for notes. Um, I haven't. Now I know. Let me say this: I have not spent a lot of time in job trailers, like 40 hours a week in job trailers, and I do know that there's still elements of that. There's elements of that on our project, right? Where it's still very much that kind of insular boys club, is the best way I'll phrase it. Um, we I see more diversity on owner's side when it comes to project management, engineers, et cetera. I don't see it as often. I'm not saying it's not there, but I just don't see it as often on the builder side. So, and so those trailers end up being a lot of men, right? And then a sprinkle of women from the owner side. But um, it's getting better, but boy, it's a long pipeline. So I'll give you an example. We were interviewing, it was an RFQ stage or a CMR, maybe I can't remember. Anyway, it was RFQ, and we're interviewing them, and all all the proposed people on the project were men, all of them, right? So I asked them through the process, I said, well, so talk to me a little bit about diversity in your organization, blah, 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 blah. I said, because I just see a bunch of white men. And I literally said that to them because at that point I was just pissed, right? So, oh, no, 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 we have all these things. We have these women in construction events and all that kind of stuff. Great. So they were like, what's the word I'm looking for? They back on their heels, right? When I kind of drew it to their attention. So then, of course, after the interview, I mean, that was the sole reason why they didn't get the job, but it did just speak to, their culture. So anyway, so they sent me a thing later of a picture of a bunch of women, I don't know, at one of their events, right, for their organization. And I said, great, but you don't have any in your pipeline. Like, if you really were committed to this, you would have grown them into your pipeline versus showing everybody at the company picnic. Like, that does nothing
Right.
for me. So I'm just saying, I, because my role as the owner, I wasn't out on in the job field all day, every day, that I don't know that I didn't have to prove myself as much because I was the owner. So with the owner, you have built-in credibility because I'm paying the bills, right? In the grand scheme, like, that's the owner. Don't piss off the owner. Don't insult her, that sort of thing. So I was fortunate, I guess, in that way.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's a very fair answer. It's like, yeah, there's still an issue. I just personally haven't felt it, with the exception of some stupid minor stuff.
No, and my nature is one of uh I'm always in learner mode. I always want to learn. So I have it, and just because I just find the whole thing fascinating. So I would always go into situations, whether it's tense or not, from the, well, help me, like, just teach me. Like, I would always, like, for example, I was walking on one of the jobs we had, it was like 20 years ago, and they were welding up the steel beams. And I'm roaming around, that sort of stuff. And I get over to the guy that, they're um, those guys are union and they go all over the country, right? Those guys. So anyway, so I'm talking to this guy and I'm like, so tell me about this. So come to find out he was from, like, I don't know, Northeast. Do you know that they take their blue jeans and they sew leather in the butt Did you know that? Because the steel gets so hot, it'll burn their butt. So they sew in leather so that they can sit on the steel and do it. And so like that's just a stupid example, but I've never forgotten it. Just because I don't go
That's
in
funny.
going, you're paying us, you're charging me too much for the steel worker. It's like, well, do you know what the steel worker is really doing up there? So anyway, so I've always just been curious, and if you go into most things curious, people don't treat you like crap, right? It's the old Ted Lasso, right? Be curious, not judgmental. There you go. Got to weave in
Totally.
Ted Lasso. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It's not
Nice.
only curious, but knowing you a little bit and just hearing you talk here, and I bet it was a curious with a little bit of humility. Like that's
Oh,
what you're
no
kind of
doubt.
conveying. And all of a sudden people
Absolutely.
usually open up.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Hey,
Yep.
the other thing, and we got to go a little bit quick on this because it's been such a great conversation. I just looked at the time, went, whoa. But you mentioned again a few minutes ago culture, and I asked you the one question, but the second question I have about
Oh, uh-huh.
culture, which is a big part of this thing called the co-way. What is it? And again, it may not be anything specific here. It may not be, oh, we hold meetings or whatever the answer is fine. But I'm guessing that culture matters to you and to MD Anderson in
Mhm.
your department. What do y'all do? What do you do to try to create and retain, kind of like with attracting and retaining
Yeah,
talent, culture and the importance of it? And how does that get passed down to project teams? Talk about culture when it comes to project leadership.
man, really great question. So I have two answers, I guess I'm gonna say. So because they're a little bit different. There's my one role of culture, my role as the department head, and how do I maintain the culture of a design and construction team, right? And then the other side of that is culture of a project, right? It has its own micro culture, micro organism of a culture there. So what I can speak to is what I try to do, what my vision is that the culture of our department is one where people feel seen, validated, appreciated. Like this is stressful work. This is not, it can be intense at times. You got mean doctors yelling at you about how they want to. So my goal is to make sure that they feel supported, all of they can't, they don't have to suffer in silence. That's my other little phrase. Do not suffer in silence. So I have that one element we do, that I work very hard on. When it comes to project cultures, um, we partnering meetings, I'm not necessarily a big fan on, other than you get everybody together at the beginning and everybody knows that, Karen's got 3 dogs and, blah, blah, those kind of like personal things, which I do think matter. But the jobs are so dynamic and they size up and size down. I mean, if you think about the bell curve of project staffing, it's massive, right? So what I try to do is have my team, and I've got 2 directors who are exceptional at this, where they choose people for the team based on fit, not talent. Because I can teach you how to be a project manager. I can teach you how to do an evaluation of the different type of air handling units. But if you're a jackass, and can't get along with people, you've done like, so we're much more uh directive about who is the right fit for that team. And if we bring somebody in that ends up being bad, like it happened, I don't know, it was like 2 months ago. So I'm calling the director going, he's got to go. It's not working, and pull the plug quickly. Good guy, just not with that team, with that culture, with those clients, that whatever. So I guess I would say we're much more intentional of how we assemble teams, and we make quick adjustments. If there's an issue, there's something, we make an adjustment. We don't dilly dally around on that because it can become, a cancer in the project team. So it's,
This,
I don't try to dictate the cultures of those teams because they have to flourish and develop their own substrate, for lack of a better phrase, right? And I don't want to tell them you need to have blue carpet because they all may decided they needed red carpet. Well, then do red as long as you're in budget and on time. What do I care? right?
Man,
So it's
I would,
takes a
Karen,
while to get there.
I would love to have worked with you, man, because that is exactly right. And everything you said just resonated, including um, love. I don't think I've ever heard this before. It wasn't about talent; it was about fit. Um, I have the same mindset. I've just never heard it put that way. That right
Well,
there.
and I
That will be making the cut on the social media release. I can tell you right now, that was good stuff.
so, and let me tell you, we get in trouble with HR a lot. I shouldn't say a lot. I got a thick file, but nothing's ever stopped me from having a thick file. So, a lot of times when we're interviewing people, we'll say, you hit somebody and you're like, yep, that's the person. Then sometimes you go, it's just not the right fit. Sometimes you can put your finger on it and you can say, well, they used I a lot instead of we, or, those kind of things. But sometimes you can just tell and you're like, it's a fit thing. I don't know how. So I've twice in my career, I didn't follow my instinct on fit with somebody, and both times we had to get rid of them later. So I've learned to trust that instinct, trust that gut, that person. Again, I can teach you how to file paperwork. That I'm not worried about that. Can you get
The, la-
along?
the last book I read, Karen, this is an indictment of myself. I don't read
Uh-huh.
enough, but it was a good one, and I loved it because it was short. I think it was Malcolm Gladwell,
Uh-huh.
who's written a
Uh-huh.
bunch, and it's called Blink. And the whole
Uh-huh.
premise, you ever read that?
Yep, sure have. Yeah,
So you're
that instinct, immediate.
well, when it's something that you kind of are, if not an expert on, you didn't just fall off the turnip truck. You've been dealing
Yeah.
with people for a while. Your gut is 99% of the time right, and you just
Yep.
proved it right there
Yep.
with your two.
Yep.
We're gonna have to do a part
Yep.
two because I got five other things I want to ask you, but we are way past time. You are
No
a delight.
problem.
You're a delight to talk
Oh,
to, Karen. Thank you.